Number 5. The Monte Cristo Homestead. Situated in the sleepy town of Junee, New South Wales, the Monte Cristo Homestead is regarded to be the most haunted property in all of Australia. Its reputation is derived from the amount of tragic events that have occurred there since it was built in 1885. From the time of its construction up until 1948, the Crawley family owned and resided in the property. During this period, the family witnessed many untimely deaths, including the tragic death of their own daughter Ethel when the nanny accidentally dropped her down the main staircase. Until her dying day, the nanny claimed that an invisible force had pushed the baby straight out of her arms. To this day, young children become very agitated when in proximity of the same staircase. Other tragedies include a maid believed to have fallen from the balcony and a stable boy apparently burned to death on the property. Perhaps the most heart-wrenching of the Monte Cristo tragedies was that of Harold Steele. Harold's mother was a caretaker of the homestead and kept her intellectually challenged son chained to their cottage for over 40 years. When the mother died in her sleep, Harold cradled her body for several days before the gruesome scene was discovered. He was severely malnourished and placed in an institution where he died not long afterwards. William Crawley died in this very room in 1910 from blood poisoning, and ironically years later a pregnant woman bled to death on the same bed, most likely as a result of a botched abortion. The current owner, Reg Ryan, claims that many people that enter the house feel very uneasy and need to leave straight away. A number of people also claim to have seen the ghost of William Crawley himself standing in the doorway of his own room, and the ghost of Elizabeth Crawley is also very present in the house. The new residents of the house have also reported ghostly figures, strange lights, weird sounds, and animal mutilations that cannot be explained. Number 4. The Sallie House. The Sallie House is located in Atchison, Kansas, and is regarded as one of the most haunted places in the United States. Built on an Indian burial ground between 1867 and 1871, the normal-looking brick house gives you no evidence of its ghostly reputation. But many who have lived there claim that the house contains evil spirits and is haunted by the ghost of a little girl who was later given the name Sally. In the early 90s, the house was brought to national attention when the owners Tony and Deborah Pickman started to have some disturbing paranormal encounters. Tony was even physically attacked, and this was witnessed and documented by the popular television show Sightings. What's most disturbing is that the investigators from the show also endured cuts and burns on their skin while gathering paranormal data from the house. It's called the Sallie House because the daughter of some previous tenants had an imaginary friend named Sally, and she is believed to be one of the spirits haunting the house. When Tony Pickman drew a picture of the ghost, the daughter identified it as her friend Sally. Some of the other phenomena experienced by the Pickmans included wall-hung pictures turned upside down, strangely melted candles and burnt finger marks, multiple photo anomalies. Tony had an actual sighting of Sally on Halloween morning 1993. Also, while napping, Tony heard a woman's voice say, "Here's your remote," as the TV remote control was placed on his chest by unseen hands. Number 3. The Villisca Axe Murder House. The events that took place in this house on the 9th of June 1912 is the bloodiest mass murder in Iowa history and guaranteed to give you nightmares even when you're awake. The 6 members of the Moore family and 2 other children sleeping over that night were found bludgeoned to death in the Moore residence. All 8 victims, including 6 children, had severe head wounds from an axe. The blade had split the father's head, while the rest of the occupants had their skulls crushed by the blunt end of the axe. The murders caused a national sensation, and while many suspects were questioned and even tried, they were later acquitted, and this mass murder remains unsolved to this day. Some say Mr. Moore's business rival had hired a thug to carry out the murders, while others suspected the weird travelling preacher Reverend Kelly, which incidentally boarded a train on the morning the bodies were discovered. Whether it's the overwhelming nature of the crime or the fact that these murders remain unresolved, the house has become a very active site for the supernatural. Apparitions have often been seen, and disembodied footsteps and voices are common occurrences. Many people report they have seen and heard children laughing and then crying, as well as some children telling others to hide. To this day, the Villisca Axe murder case remains open, enticing amateur sleuths around the globe. The Moore homestead in Villisca is now a museum, and if you have a taste for the gruesome and ghoulish, for around $500 a night, you can even rent the house out for a spooky sleepover. Number 2, the Ancient Ram Inn. Built in 1145, the Ancient Ram Inn is situated in the village of Watton Under Edge, Gloucestershire, United Kingdom. The land on which the property was built is on the intersection of 2 ley lines. These are places which people believe to have high spiritual energy. When you use a map, you can trace the ley lines all the way through to the centre of Stonehenge. According to legend, Stonehenge has energy that travels through the ley lines to feed the paranormal power found in the Ancient Ram Inn. If that wasn't bad enough, the property was also built on an ancient pagan burial ground which resided in this location over 5,000 years ago. It is also believed to be the scene of child sacrifices and devil worship. Some of the many entities that have been reported to haunt the cottage are that of a young girl called Rosie, a high priestess, and even a male sex demon known as an incubus. A popular legend surrounding the Ancient Ram Inn is that of a witch that was burned at the stake. This event reportedly occurred in the 1500s. A lot of people believe that the woman's spirit still haunts one of the rooms of the house to this day. It is reported that the woman took refuge in one of the rooms of the house before she was captured and killed. Today that room is called the Witch Room. The current owner, John Humphreys, has discovered the skeletal remains of children just under the staircase. Broken daggers were also found within the skeletons. Until this day, he claims to be haunted and attacked by various entities in the house on a regular basis. One of the most haunted rooms is called the Bishop's Inn. The room is found on the first floor of the house. When the inn was still a bed and breakfast, many of the guests would refuse to sleep in this room. Those who decided to be a little more daring ended up fleeing in the middle of the night. It is said that the ghost of a monk haunts the room on a regular basis. Other guests have also fled from the house in the middle of the night after claiming to have seen furniture flying around the bedrooms, visions of a little girl wandering the hallways, and have even been pushed down onto a bed by a randy incubus. Number 1. The Amityville Horror House. This is by far the most documented and notorious haunted house in the world. It is located in the sleepy seaside town of Amityville and an hour's drive from New York. And although many people argue that the entire story was nothing more than an elaborate hoax, I myself believe otherwise. Let me start at the beginning. On November the 13th, 1974, 6 members of the DeFeo family were tragically shot to death while they slept in their beds. Even to this day, how these murders were carried out remain unsolved and shrouded in mystery. One of the main anomalies surrounding the murders is the fact that none of the neighbours heard any of the gunshots despite their close proximity to the DeFeo house. Each family member was shot with a .35 Marlin rifle. Now, to give you an idea of how loud this gun actually is, I found a YouTube video of someone demonstrating the same gun. Let's have a listen. You can clearly hear how loud a gun like this would be in a quiet suburban neighbourhood. Have a listen to what Ronald DeFeo's attorney had to say. Now, the authorities initially thought that the bodies had all been moved from their original spots, but the autopsy reports showed that they were all in the original places where they were shot. Furthermore, toxicology reports found that there were no drugs in any of the victims. Let's think about this logically. If you were to hear shots fired in your own home, wouldn't your first reaction be to run for your life or at least look for a place to hide? Not one single victim moved from their bed, and in my opinion, the only explanation for this is that much darker forces were at play on that cold winter's night. On December the 4th, 1975, Judge Thomas Stark sentenced DeFeo to 6 concurrent sentences of 25 years to life. He's currently held at Greenhaven Correctional Facility in the town of Greenhaven, New York, and all of his appeals and requests to the parole board to date have been denied. On December the 18th, 1975, the Lutz family moved into the DeFeo home. Even though it had only been 13 months since the murders, they discussed the events that had occurred in the house and came to the decision that they would all be okay. At no point did they ever consider the possibility that there could be any residual leftover from the gruesome murders. Even though the family didn't have a problem with the home's history, they still decided to have it blessed by a priest. While blessing one of the rooms, the priest heard a voice telling him to get out and was also slapped by an invisible entity. George Lutz also found himself waking up every morning at around 3:15 a.m, which ironically was around the same time the DeFeo family was murdered. Kathy Lutz would have vivid nightmares of the DeFeo tragedy. She would experience in detail where the bullets went in and out of Mrs. DeFeo's body, as well as determine who died in what order. This was later confirmed by Ronald DeFeo's attorney, who told Kathy that her visions were totally in line with what the police had discovered. None of this information was ever published or leaked to the public. George Lutz constantly felt sick inside the house and lost a considerable amount of weight. He started to undergo extreme personality changes and would yell at his wife and family for no apparent reason. He was also constantly chopping wood for the fireplace, but no matter how hot it got inside, he just wasn't able to get warm. His wife at one stage felt that she was embraced by a female entity and would often find swarms of flies in various rooms, which was highly unusual in the middle of winter. Their daughter Missy told her mum that she had a friend named Jody that would represent herself as a large pig with bright red eyes. Jody told Missy that she was happy they were living there and that she was going to live there forever, which George and Kathy found quite disturbing. The family would often hear weird noises and footsteps throughout the night and would experience unusual temperature changes that would occur at random. They also found a black substance coming out of the toilet that just couldn't be explained. On the 13th of January 1976, only 28 days after moving in, the Lutz family left their house and all of their belongings and never returned to 112 Ocean Avenue. Even though the family owned a successful business, they did pour a lot of money into the house and they were never known to be storytellers or scam artists. By all accounts, they were just a normal young couple trying to raise their kids in what initially seemed to be their dream home. 5 months after they fled the house, it was sold at a substantial loss and everything in the home was auctioned off. 20 days after the Lutz family fled their house, New York TV station Channel 5 called in a celebrated pair of psychics, Ed and Lorraine Warren. At the time, they were famous for investigating the paranormal and supernatural. The TV station also assembled a group of other accomplished psychics to help with the investigation. Soon after the Channel 5 news team and their reporter Marvin Scott arrived at the house, people started behaving in a very unusual manner. While on the second floor, one of the cameramen started clutching his chest and started to experience stabbing chest pains. When the psychics approached the second floor, they could all feel the bad remnants of the murders and an overwhelming sense of sadness. One of the psychics saw a young girl crying, and during the seance, Lorraine Warren sensed an evil demonic presence that was separate from the murdered spirits of the DeFeo family. Now, even though nothing happened for the TV cameras, one of the images taken that night would, in my opinion, send a chill down the back of even the most hardened skeptic. One of the cameras was set up on a tripod on the second floor and automatically shot off a flash photograph every few minutes. One of those photos shows a distinct figure of a little boy standing in front of the doorway, peering over the staircase. There were no children in the house that night, and what makes this photo even creepier is the uncanny resemblance to one of the DeFeo children. There have been many people over the years that have tried to discredit the Amityville Horror as nothing more than a well-concocted hoax. But both George and Kathy Lutz stood by their story until the day they died. In 1979, they both took a lie detector test concerning the events in the house and passed with flying colours.